All right. Hi, everybody. Today is May 22nd, 2020. This is the Options Alert Service update video for the SMB Options Alert Service customers. So welcome, everyone. Hope everybody, before I forget, has a nice Memorial Day weekend, those of you who are from America anyway. And so I would like to start out our session by giving our normal advice to you, which is that SMB training is not a broker dealer. We're doing these webinars for educational purposes only. Today's webinar does not contain any live position. Everything is hypothetical and therefore not subject to the market factors of liquidity, slippage, and commissions. I also want to point out that options trading is risky, as are all forms of investing and trading. And so you should not expose any of your capital to options trading until you've fully understood those risks. Your broker has a document which explains those risks in detail. Please do not trade options until you've read that document and fully apprise yourself of the risks of options trading. Okay, so last time we met, we were in the middle of our June trade, our June Rhino trade, and we had not yet actually initiated our July Rhino trade. But we did wrap up our June trade since then, and we also initiated our July trade and made a number of moves in both cases. So I wanted to start today by going over the June Rhino trade conclusion, and that happened on May 6th. And so what I would like to first of all mention to you is that the Rhino trade has an aspect where it's overlapping capital, and so when a trade ends, normally you will be entering another trade very shortly thereafter. Typically, there are two trades going on at the same time, but when we get an opportunity to close a trade at a profit, before that trade, is in its normal cycle of about 50 to 60 days. If we get an opportunity where we think we can make more profit by closing it early, then there may only be one trade on at any particular time, even though typically there are two. And the June-July period is one of those periods where we close the June trade early, and therefore the only trade that we have on right at this moment is the July trade. We'll talk a little bit later about when we will be initiating the August trade. So last time we met, the Rhino trade was in this structure, and I'm going to bring it over to you so you see that. And this was really the structure which existed prior to our execution of the exit of this trade. So let's go ahead and take a look at, actually, I'm going to move this back because it helps here. Okay, great. So this is the June trade. And when we last met, it was in this structure. It's just the time decay of the option happened to, the volatility came down in the period since we last met. And also there was a, further time decay of the short options on this trade, which exceeds, as do all of these trades, the short options, the time decay on those exceeds the amount of daily time decay of the long options, and that's why we are what they call positive theta, which means that we have a positive time decay on this position. An easier way of saying that is time is our friend. So simply the passage of time can be very, very helpful to these trades because we are net negative time decay, and therefore we are gaining every day, all other things being equal, on the value of the trade. So on May 6th at 11, the position looked like this. And let me maybe make it a little larger for you so it'll be a little bit easier to see. Let me make it a lot larger because apparently we're not, and there was a lot of movement in the market, obviously, over the last several months. So sometimes we have to really broaden these graphs out in order to show you the exact location of the trade. So this is where we were on May 6th, and I made the determination that the trade had a likelihood of, the market had a likelihood of running, and I was a little concerned about there being a dramatic move upwards, and then we would be in a position where there were really no viable upwards adjustments on the trade. And so right around, this is a very good value day for options, as often happens as volatility is coming out of the market. And as you can see, there was already a big jump before we took, what is happening here is we are about to take off both the upper and the lower put broken wing butterflies on this trade. And we had very, very good execution that day, and there was just a lot of high value. And these things, as you become more experienced, you'll understand there's certain days that provide very high value for your trades. And typically they're days where the market had been very volatile, and then there's something where people are relaxing and there's less fear. When there's less fear and it happens all at once right after a big shock, you'll see a lot of value come into options trades frequently, and that's what was happening on this day. And you know, we're professionals over here. We saw this and we wanted our alert service customers to get the advantage of it. So that is why we seized on this day. And therefore we closed, first of all, we closed it in pieces because it's good to do these things in an orderly way. So we first took off the top put broken wing butterfly. And you'll see that happening here as we move to 11:30. And then we took off the bottom put broken wing butterfly. And by the time we were done, we actually had we had very good fortune on this trade in that execution or the value really of these positions just got very, very good around this time. We saw it happening, and so we wanted to alert it out to you folks so you could all profit from it. So the ultimate conclusion on this trade was a $1,350 gain. Sorry, $1,380 gain, and that was the conclusion of the June trade. Now we're going to move over. We're actually going to move backwards in time and focus on the July trade. And the July trade happened before we closed the June trade, and that is almost always happening with the Rhino. You'll have a couple trades on it once, as I mentioned earlier in the session. However, you know, well, you'll see in a minute, because we closed our June trade on May 6th, yet we started our July trade on April 30th. It's too early to have our August trade on. So right now we only have one trade on, which is fairly unusual for this service, but it does, you know, happen sometimes. So here we are, and it is April 30th. And so let's move to the end of the day. And you'll see at the end of the day that we have opened up the first broken wing butterfly, which was the initiation of the July trade. Typically, we start the Rhino between days 65, 66, and days 80, sort of depending on some judgment calls that we make. And so in this case, we had put on this July trade, and it looks like this. We are long the 1090, we're short the 1140, and we're long the 1180. And you can see from a price chart standpoint, this is where we are. The market had started to bounce off of the terrible lows that we you know, hit in mid-March. That bounce had actually started in mid-March and has pretty much continued through to today. So that is how we started the trade. And then the conditions were correct for the Rhino protocol on May 8th to add the second portion of the broken wing butterfly. And so you'll see in a minute that what we did here was we added the second one, and the second broken wing butterfly in the Rhino strategy has 20 points strike selection above each of the original strikes. So we buy here the 1200, which is 20 points higher than the 1180. We buy here the 1160, which is 20 points higher than the 1140. And we buy here at the 1100, which is also 20 points above the 1110, which is 20 points above the 1090. So at this point, we were up some money on the trade, and the position was looking like this. Now, then 6 days later, there was a big sell-off in the market, and I want you to note that with the Rhino, you're typically not positive deltas, but volatility was so high that the deltas were positive. And so that's a little bit of a dangerous situation, because we then have delta working against us, and we also have Vega, which is the options response to volatility. They were both working against us, because if there was a spike in volatility, the deltas, the price change would come down, obviously. So we're +7 on those, meaning we're losing $7 for each point. And that changes because of gamma, which is a whole other discussion we'll have one day. But Vega, this is really the most dangerous part, this negative Vega, which is a much bigger Greek than the others. That one could really become a problem if we had a sell-off. And so I try to, we're in a very difficult time to trade options income trades. It is a, I shouldn't say so difficult, it's dangerous. And so I'm being very conservative. And I decided on May 14th, with the big spike in volatility that day, that I wanted to take off that top butterfly, which ironically reduced our positive deltas, even though it's so far behind the market, because both put broken wing butterflies were negative, were positive deltas at that point. And so I just felt I wanted to keep everyone out of trouble and have a more limited sized position when the market had rallied so much off of these lows and then come down, and then the potential of a retest of the lows in March is concerning me. It may or may not happen, but it's concerned me enough that I'd rather make a little less profit on this trade and make sure that we don't have too much capital exposed and take a substantial hit. And you'll see a little bit later when I do a summary of how the Rhino trade has been doing in this alert service since we got started, how you'll see this theme run throughout my trading. I traded through 2008, which was the most difficult market I had ever traded through. And I also traded through May of 2011, sorry, August through December 2011, which was the second most difficult time I've ever traded through. And this period, this COVID-19 economic collapse era that we're in right now is really rivals anything I've ever seen. But I made a decision that this time we're going to minimize everyone's exposure to this period when I deem it too dangerous. And so that seemed a dangerous moment for me when we actually had that sell-off occur. So I took off that top broken wing butterfly, and that is the last move that we made. That was on May 14th. So you can see now we're back into a single put broken wing butterfly structure in the July, and yet I want you to notice something. The August, well, let's get up to today. So we'll get to May 22. And so the August trade is 91 days out. Remember, I said the range for starting Rhino is days 66 through 80. Sorry. Did I say that right? Yeah, 66 through 80. And so we are at the moment sort of between trades. And so we're not quite at day 80, and I'm not sure I'm really going to start it at day 80. I'll probably start a little later than that in the game. So we probably have on this August trade a good 10, 11 days before, at the earliest, we would really pull the trigger on entering into the August trade. So it's going to be a little bit of a less active period on the alert service. Now, I want you to notice that here's where we are. We're up 150 bucks on this trade. And we are positive theta, meaning even though we are way, way out of the tent, which options traders understand to be the place where you get the richest gain in time premium, we are positive theta. So we're gaining a little bit of money every day on the trade, all other issues being equal. And we're nicely positioned if we get a pullback, into this area. Volatility will spike, but if it starts to then get relieved, and we're kind of in this period of time in the last several weeks of the trade, it could end up becoming very, very profitable. You won't actually see on these lines because they're separated by 14 days each. So you're not going to see the dramatic increase that happens in here if we get close to this. So July is a little bit more of a defensive trade than we've had the other ones, but we're going to make sure that you're going to still be gaining value every day in the trade. If not, we're going to make some adjustments. The major adjustment would be to pull in the wings on these on this put broken wing butterfly, adding a little income into the trade. Now, just for the fun of it, I decided I wanted to do a sort of a summary of where we are so far this year. And the trade is up $2,850. We had a very good start to the year, up to oops, whoa, what happened here? Don't know why. 1 second, I got to bring that back. My apologies. I got to get this over here. And yeah, okay. So we will now go into slideshow mode and get back to where we were. So we had a $1,200 gain in January, $1,095 gain in February. The March trade became subject to the COVID situation. And actually, if you remember, that really started in February, the sell-off from the COVID-19 problems. And I just pulled out because I did not want us to experience something very bad on that trade. And April, I got out of also right around that time. I just have learned from experience, when you've got a Mack truck coming down the street with that speed and that velocity, you better get out of the way. And so I got everyone out of the way, got you out of harm's way. And we waited out that very, very heavy period. And then when the market started to settle down a little bit, we entered May. We were in and out of May pretty quickly for a nice gain. And then June, was very successful with this 1380 gain. And so and July I have not entered here. We're up $150. So we're actually up a total of $3,000 as of today, but we have an unrealized gain in there for July. So I don't know if you want to count that or not, but we're up just about $3,000 so far this year on the alert service, not considering any of the activity prior to that. So anyway, just wanted to share that with everyone, just sort of like a mid-year summary, because even though we're only in May, from an option standpoint, we're past June actually, and that can happen on a trade like this where it's very long term, but you may end up closing the trades earlier. Frequently, we will actually close a trade prior to the month the trade expires. That's very, very common with the Rhino. It's probably the majority of the cases would be that way. So, all right. Well, I want to wish everyone a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, and we will catch up with you in our next Rhino Trade Alert. Good trading. Be safe. Enjoy your 3-day weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.